Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button to extend the energy and that S. So if you don't know me, I'm Gabe from BusyWorksBeats.com. We trained over 1 million producers around the world. Some have gone to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Trippie Redd, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Lil Baby, Glorilla, won Grammys, done extraordinary things. And I'm excited to share this information with you guys because in order for them to get there, they had to reprogram their mind. I have some free books. If you guys go to busyworksbeats.com and just go to the free downloads, you'll find my books there for free. And one of the books is called Producer Bible. And it was rewritten. I basically rewrote the parables of Jesus. But for this video, I'm going to explain a deeper level of some of the concepts because we're going to talk about the subconscious mind and how to reprogram your brain quite literally. And what it all starts with is a belief. So let me turn this volume down a little bit. It's a little loud on my end. There we go. Now I can get up on the mic. Pause. All right. So it all starts with, a belief. What is a belief, though? Nobody really explains what a belief is. And the belief, think of it like a garden. Let's switch screens here because I want to draw this out on my new tool here. So think of it like a garden, and we're going to come back to this concept. Basically, everybody has a conscious mind and a subconscious. Some people call it the unconscious or the subconscious, meaning below consciousness. So here we're going to draw, which is really small. Let's zoom on in. Let's draw our garden. Okay, so here's our garden. It's just this space. Now in a garden, you have, soil. So soil makes up the foundation of what a garden actually is. This is your subconscious mind. Now, if I have to get granular with you guys, what actually is soil? Soil has what's called nutrients inside of the soil. So you have carbon, you have sulfur, you have nitrogen, all in the soil. There's other nutrients as well. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff, but let's just draw little dots in here to represent the nutrients. So the nutrients are what your seed needs in order to grow. When you plant a seed into the ground, water is not the thing that makes it grow. That's the mistake a lot of people make. Water is not the actual thing that makes it grow. Basically, when you put a seed into the ground, which is your idea, okay? So you plant an idea, this little green thing right here. This is your seed of an idea. Okay, it's your concept. It's your belief, we'll call it. When you guys pour water onto your garden, what you're actually doing is creating focus onto that idea or that seed. Okay, so this is water, me pouring my attention onto the seed. Now, again, the mistake people make is they think water is the actual food. Water is not the food. The soil has nutrients in it. What water does is it helps to saturate the soil and go find the nutrients for the seed. So water, when you guys pour attention onto your ideas and your beliefs, you strengthen them. And when you strengthen them, they go out into the subconscious mind to pull in the nutrients or the evidence, I'll call it, to re-solidify your seed of an idea or belief. Okay, now when you grow roots from your seed, now you are strengthening what's called your neural pathways in order to have this basically baked into your brain, quite literally. So this is why habits are so hard to break because it's funny. This happened today. This is so crazy. This is a real story. My fiance literally just told me that she was picking vines and the vines were so strong, she couldn't pull them away from the material. Okay. So this is the same exact thing that happens in our brain. Once we have built-in habits and habit force, some people call it, it's an ingrained neural pathway that is so ingrained that it's hard to pull the root out. So a lot of us have beliefs that are counter what we actually need to succeed because we've gathered the evidence and reinforced the focus on a belief that actually holds us back. And so that belief spreads its roots and gets really ingrained into our subconscious mind to where in order to counteract that with more evidence, it requires a lot of work. So this video is how do you actually reprogram your mind? And we're going to get really deep with it. Okay, so again, let's just go over the basics right now. Your subconscious mind, notice I said subconscious, okay, is a garden. It's a soil. It's like the garden has soil. The seed is an idea, whether yours or somebody else's. Now, here's the thing about modern day society is that we think our ideas are our own. And most of the ideas that we think are ours are not our own. They actually belong to other people, to propaganda, to the social media algorithm. Those aren't original ideas. They did not come from your synthesis or reasoning. And, the majority of us are actually growing other people's ideas in our garden because of the way we're conditioned to accept based on our brain waves. We'll get into the science in a little bit. So anyhow, this idea, this seed wants to grow. So it goes into the soil. So when you farm, you dig a hole, you put the seed in the hole, you water the seed because the water will go into the ground, the soil, to seek out the nutrients that are in the soil, the carbon, the nitrogen, the sulfur, the oxygen, whatever it needs. It goes out and grabs those nutrients and it pulls it back to the seed. Now, from here, the seed uses different things, like it grows apical meristem, which grows toward the sun. We don't have to get too biological with this conversation. The point is, the water goes to find the stuff, the needed supplies. So when you give your idea focus, when you give your goal focus, your subconscious mind will subconsciously, unaware of yourself, will go out and look for signals to reinforce that actual belief until you gain enough evidence to then create what's called an action. So before I get any deeper, let me just make this extremely clear. I learned this from a seminar in Atlanta, and it made so much sense. And it spells tear, like you're going to tear a hole in the universe, or it spells tear. Think of it that way. Okay. So the T stands for thought. Okay. Which could be yours or somebody else's. So this is like us planting the seed in the garden. Then we have what's called the emotionally charged state. Okay. The emotionally charged state basically grows the roots for the seed. So like I said, this is funny, this just happened like 10 minutes ago. My fiance was pulling vines from a material, and the vines were so strong, the roots were so strong that it was really difficult to pull the vine away from that material. Okay. So this is when we create what are called neural pathways. If you guys want to get technical, in our brain, we create pathways for habitual thinking, repetitive thinking, or repetitive thoughts to then form these paves or like roads in our brain to where energy wants to travel down the path of least resistance. And so when you have an ingrained neural pathway, it's basically creating the automatic response to something, because again, energy wants to flow down the path of least resistance. And so if you constantly pave roads to make, person A think they're going to get to, destination 1 quicker through your road, that it will take that road, metaphorically speaking. I know I'm kind of jumping around with analogies, but follow me here. So we have the initial thought. That thought is then emotionalized and charged. Then we take what's called action. Now, action is, analogous to the fruit, I'll say, in the garden. So once the seed grows into the plant is not the actual action. The plant is the becomingness. Okay, it's the manifestation. Okay, the fruit is the actual result. Okay, the fruit being the thing that the plant bears. So again, if I put a seed into a garden, aka your idea, your belief system, you put it into soil. This is your cultural environment. This is your conditioned behavior of people around you. This is what you deem okay. This is your moral compass crafted by everybody around you, because we humans have mirror neurons which mimic everybody around us to keep tribal coherence. So however you grow up in your environment, you will adapt those beliefs. It's built into the DNA. Quite literally, it's built into the DNA. To when you see people acting and behaving a certain way, you literally absorb it as if it was programmed into your computer, your mind's computer. And we will get into the mind's computer in a little bit here, but you automatically accept your cultural environment. This is how the world has seen complete atrocities and the world has seen complete peace at the same time. It's because it's based on how your environment is shaped. Then you shape your cultural understanding and meaning of what things mean. Okay, so long story short, the soil is your environment. Okay, now the water is the focus you pour onto your idea or your belief. Okay, now what is a belief? So I mapped this stuff out into different little clips. I had ChatGPT help me sharpen my thoughts, so that's why I screenshotted this. And basically it helped me to fully understand, which I'm going to explain in coding language in a little bit, but I didn't want to lose you guys too early in the conversation. But a belief, according to the ChatGPT, helped me frame this better, which is not only just emotionally charging a thought, it's also when it comes from a trusted source, an authoritative source. Okay. And then when it's repeated. Okay. So behavior, or excuse me, a belief, I should say, is if you were young and a pit bull like myself, okay, we were walking from the church or the park and coming back to my friend Jordan's house, and the neighbor had a loose pit bull, two of them loose, and we knew they were loose because we're like, wait, they're not chained up to the tree, and the owner was right on the porch watching them too, and they were about 10 feet away from the owner, but about 20 to 30 feet away from us, and then we saw one of the dogs like start moving forward and we took off. I was running the fastest I've ever run in my life. I had to be 9 to 10 years old. So just imagine 7 black kids running from pit bulls. I think the owners were white, not that that makes any difference. But the owners weren't like, stop, you know, hey, come back. It was nothing the owner said. They just let the dogs chase us. And it was 2 fast pit bulls. And we were running the fastest I've ever run in my entire life up that hill to Jordan's house. And I was like, my heart going 100 miles an hour. Now, my belief, because I had that experience, hands-on experience, first person experience, I can now define a pit bull specifically as an aggressive dog because it chased us. It became a threat. And I can also say, because I'm black and the owner was white, I can also say that that white person doesn't care because they let their aggressive dog attack me without even trying to call the dog back. So that could be a false, biased belief that I can embed into my subconscious mind simply based off of that experience. And I'm using that as an experience because that's real. It's a real story. Okay, so depending on whether you guys have that experience or whether that experience is something you've watched or heard stories from. So sometimes you don't even have to live the experience. It could come from a book, it could come from a movie, it could come from your friend telling you a story, your grandpa, whatever. So let's add experience in here plus the emotional charge state. And again, we're emotionally charged because our heart was going 100 miles an hour trying to run away from those dogs because we were in survivor mode. So we were definitely emotionally charged about that. And not that it came from a trusted source, but we had the experience and we had the emotional charge. Now, what did that do? That sealed in my brain that pit bulls were not friendly dogs as a kid. I always avoided pit bulls. If I saw one, I would go the opposite way. So these 2 ingredients created my belief around pit bulls, okay? And we have to acknowledge this for everything that we experience, whether it's somebody of a different color, skin, which you might not even know that you're opposed to them. Or, you know, it could be an animal of some sort. It could be people with money. You could demonize them because your boss treated you a certain way. There's a lot of different scenarios. Okay, so let's go back to the garden concept here, just to keep revisiting the basics. Okay, the garden has a seed. This is your belief system based on your experience and your emotional charging of that experience, like me being chased by that pit bull. Okay, and then also if that came from a trusted source, like an authoritative figure, if we had parents around that told us to do a certain thing in our culture. Now, this belief, depending on me focusing on it, so let's say the next 20 days, all I did was think about that pit bull chasing us and how I'm never going to have that happen again. I'm focusing on the past in this case. And now I'm reinforcing this biased experience to now say that this is universally true, which is not the case. Not all pit bulls are aggressive. Not all, white owners of pit bulls are against me. Okay, that's a biased experience, a biased belief, but I never challenged the belief. Let's say in this case, and let's say for the next 20 days, that's all I thought about was my experience running away from the pit bull. So now I'm scared to walk down that road. I'm scared to go by that house because I know that we weren't treated a fair way. So now I might avoid, because I had a threat, I might avoid, it's called pain aversion. I might avoid my friend Jordan's house and not even go over to his house to have fun because now I'm scared to look around the corner because I'm always worried about a pit bull popping out, which I actually was, because we were like, we don't know if it's going to come from down the street, up the street. So we were constantly on the lookout because we would play sports outside. And so me ruminating over this belief over and over and over again, it creates those neural pathways, which basically get ingrained into my subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind rules 95% of what you do every single day. So as much as we think we're in control of the day, it's really the programming underneath the hood. And we'll get into that, when we get to the coding portion of this. Now, I focused on that and created I gained all the evidence my brain needed to reinforce that experience, whether true or false, because the subconscious doesn't understand what's true and what's false. It's based on how you categorize or how you define a specific input. And we'll get into that, what that means. So now I'm looking around for evidence like, yeah. And then my brain might, because we have what's called the reticular activating system. Let me spell it out here. We have the reticular activating or activation. I can't remember if it's activation or activating. I'll just call it activating system. aka the RAS. This is basically a filter that our brain uses. So whenever we consciously choose to focus on something, we will look for evidence for that specific thing in reality. This is like when people tell you to get a vision board and you look at your favorite car, like a Lamborghini Urus, and then you go outside on the street and you constantly see Lamborghini Urus or a car that looks similar to a Lamborghini Urus. It's because your brain has chosen to highlight and filter and spotlight a specific stimulus. Because when you put blue glasses on, for example, blue shades on your glasses, blues become more evident because now you're doubling the frequency of blue. 1 + 1 is 2. So every time you're looking through blue glasses, every time you see blue, it stands out because you're doubling the amplitude of it. The same thing with our brain. When you're looking for a specific signal, it becomes more apparent and amplified. Okay. So with all that being said, you might see the Urus in traffic. This is the reticular activating system. And what it's doing is looking for evidence in the soil to pull those nutrients back to the core belief. Okay. So that is a built-in system that our brain uses in order to justify or reinforce a belief, whether it's our belief or somebody else's belief. Okay. Now this is the garden analogy. And now let's finish out some of the garden analogy here. In the garden, when your seed grows, and again, the seed could be a toxic plant. It could be a toxic soil. It doesn't have to be positive. Okay. This has to be, remember guys, that this has to be a belief that serves you. Sometimes beliefs don't serve you. It serves somebody else's intent. So here we have a plant. I don't know how to draw plants. So let's just grow like a leaf, something like this. And then let's say the plant has finally bloomed after however many months, and it's become a flower. Okay, so let's just draw the fruit on the plant. So it's now a red fruit of some sort. Now the red fruit is poisonous. So if anybody bites into this, they will pass out. It's not a good fruit. And that's because maybe the concept or the belief that I was sowed by a movie or somebody else, an authoritative figure or a parent or a family member or whoever doubted me, whatever the thing was, so whoever sowed doubt in my subconscious mind, this plant grew into a real thing. And it's reinforced by the root system. So now this plant created a fruit. The fruit is not necessarily a good thing. Let's color it red to signal that it's poisonous in this case. And this becomes our reality, our lived reality. So we went from an idea that's an ethereal thing to a physical reality. And we have to live this fruit based on our belief system. Now, this could happen over a day. It could happen over 9 months. It could happen over 9 years. There's no set time for how long an idea takes to germinate into a real physical reality. Okay. So that's why when people tell you to put timelines on your goals and all this stuff, how are you going to dictate how fast you're going to get somewhere? But anyhow, so let's move into some other kind of core concepts. We're going to get a little scientific here, and I will pull up some coding examples. So this will get a little geeky from this point on. I'm just warning you guys, because this is, I taught you the Jesus level stuff, the Bible stuff. Now let's talk about the science stuff. So again, I had ChatGPT map out and make this more articulate so that I can make solid points without going too deep into the woods like I normally do. So here they help me define the belief as a story. Now, you have to even define the word story. A story is an if-then sequence. If I watch a movie with Macaulay Culkin and he gets kissed by a girl on the cheek and he falls over, then I, as a young kid, may think that anytime a girl kisses me on the cheek, I should fall over. It's a learned behavior by a movie. In this case, through a scenario that I've never experienced. And this is why you can learn vicariously through watching people. This is why people watch live streams and music production tutorials or watch tutorials. They can learn how to actually produce by watching somebody else, because our body is built with what are called mirror neurons. And the mimetic behavior we illustrate as humans wants to mime or copy what somebody else is doing. And that's how we actually learn behavior. So think of belief as an if-then sequence that the subconscious mind accepts as real. Whether you lived it, saw it, or were told it, doesn't matter. So basically, we're programmed by movies, propaganda, your friends' stories that they tell you, your grandpa's stories, you watching somebody else go through something. You don't necessarily have to live through an experience in order for it to ingrain in your subconscious mind. And we'll go through why that is. So I had trouble distinguishing what is the conscious versus the subconscious. And it mapped it out pretty clearly for me. So the conscious thought is not meant to dominate the subconscious, is meant to reprogram it. And this is when I got into the coding language. So here's where we're going to get a little geeky, like I said. Let's create a new file here for some Python. Let's call it subconscious Okay, so let's save it as a file. Now, we are going to get geeky here, but when you step into the mind frame of a coder, this all makes way more sense. Okay, so I recommend you guys learn basic Python through Codecademy is a great website to learn Python. And it reads like English, so it's really fun to learn, in my opinion. So it's not like learning a different language. Now, it says the conscious thought is not meant to dominate the subconscious. It's meant to reprogram it. So like I said, guys, your entire day of action is 95% of your subconscious mind. So the question I asked ChatGPT is, I said, if the subconscious mind is truly in charge, then what is the point of the conscious mind? And they made a very clear answer, which made sense. It said the conscious mind's point or purpose is to reprogram the subconscious mind. It gives it writable access or permission to override the programs that we were embedded as a kid. So basically, when you're from age of 0 to 7, you're programmed. Everything goes into what's called, mainly in what's called the theta state, which is where you absorb and get programmed literally into your subconscious mind. So everything a kid sees, all the traumas, all the belief systems, all the movies, all the visuals, all the stimulus gets programmed into a child from 0 to 7. That's when they're mostly in their theta state. And we'll get into what theta state means in a little bit. So they're super programmable to where they don't know fact from fiction. They don't know truth from false. They don't know what's right from wrong. Because again, the subconscious mind does not weigh what's right and wrong. It weighs evidence and it weighs supported thoughts and it weighs repetition. Because if I can program a negative thought to a positive thought, then how does my subconscious mind know what's bad and what's good if it just had both values? Okay, so that's defined differently. The point is, the subconscious, what we call human essence, or our ego, some people may call it, our individuality. Okay, the point of that is so that we can reprogram the subconscious. So we're the editors of the ethereal subconscious, which is something that we cannot see. Now, if I go into this program here, and we're going to get, like I said, really geeky. So before we even get into Python coding, it says the subconscious is automatic. It runs on old scripts. So what is a script? It's basically a Python code, which I'll show you guys. Conscious thought is reflective, meaning that you can go back and do feedback loops. You could stop the loop. It's kind of like if FL is just playing a loop over and over and over again, and you're a producer, you can go in and you could chop the loop up. You could move this piece over here. You could reverse the loop. You could flip the loop. You could pitch the loop down. That's being a conscious being. Whereas the unconscious is just the loop playing in the background without any edits. Okay, just to give you guys a musical example. The conscious mind can assign new meaning to past experiences. And this is why I said you could reshape a negative polarity into a positive polarity. So both exist. There is no right and wrong to your subconscious mind. It's just seeking evidence to reinforce the given belief system so that it creates behavior. It says the conscious mind can assign new meaning to past experiences, which reshapes the subconscious. Like I said, if I was chased as a kid by that pit bull with the white owners, I could always keep in my mind that pit bulls are evil. And if their owner's white, they probably don't like me. I could probably just live with that. And if I never questioned that, if I never said, is this universally true? Like a Socrates would ask, is this a universal truth? If I never questioned and, examined my subconscious belief system, it will automatically run on autopilot. And I will always see a pit bull as a threat. I will always see a white owner of a pit bull as a threat. Now, as an adult, once you learn about dogs and genetics and you learn about cultural norms, and we lived in the country, so they probably didn't think kids would just walk by. They thought they had free land. There's a lot of perspectives you gain as an adult. So I could say, okay, they probably didn't know we were going to walk by, because kids really don't walk that street like that. So they didn't think of anything to have their dogs off the leash. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't to hurt us. And so as an adult, you start to reason and you say, okay, I can understand why we got chased by those dogs. And the dogs were probably bored. They just wanted to play, but we thought they were going to bite us. So that, once you reframe the definition or the intent or the meaning why somebody did something, now you can go back to your definition of what happened and change that completely to now change your belief system. And this is how we reprogram ourselves. We change the perspective because we now have new evidence of a different intent or a different outcome, or a different reality, I should say. So, ChatGPT gave us some more insight. It says, why people feel stuck. It says, most people try to argue with the subconscious using logic. Okay, meaning, I'll show you guys what that means. But the subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to repetition And I'll get into the definition of this. I don't just mean arbitrary repetition. I mean quite literally a tactic of repetition. Emotion, because again, it's looking for resonance to stand above the noise signal. And visualization and experience, because the subconscious mind works off of what's called images. It does not speak in language. The subconscious mind understands images. When you write, English, these are called characters because each letter is considered an image. That's why it's called a character, the same way you have a character in a play. So each letter itself is considered one of those images that feeds into the subconscious mind. So even our written language is based off of multiple symbols combined. It says this is why affirmations alone won't work, because a lot of people tell you guys, if you just say your affirmations in the morning one time and just visualize being in a Lamborghini, you're going to have a Lamborghini. And that's not the case when you get into the tactics and the principles of how your brain is actually wired. And I'm simplifying a lot of this brain stuff. I'm not a super expert. Andrew Huberman is way, way deeper with this stuff. But, I just wanted to give you guys more depth instead of just like arbitrary, think positive, post every day. Like that's obvious. Okay, so let's keep moving through and then we'll get into the code examples because they're coming up here. The subconscious is the operating system. Okay, like I said, and we are the coders or the programmers who can dictate that operating system and change the code. Okay, so I asked it to map out a dictionary Python for us. So basically, let's use that pit bull as an example. So let's say the pit bull is the variable here, and we're going to make this variable into a dictionary. So basically, the way a dictionary works is like real life. If I look up the word BusyWorks Beats, you might find the definition, music producer who's trained 1 million producers around the world. If I look up the word ice cream, it might say cold, sweet treat created from milk or something like this. If I look up the word Python, it may say snake from the Amazon forest. So every key, the word that I'm looking up, quite literally keyword, that's why it's called a keyword. Every key that I look up in a dictionary has what's called a value. So for example, how does it know? Oh, I was like, how does it know we're talking about a pit bull? Okay. So let's say the pit bull is the image that my brain sees. Okay. This is the stimulus. This is the input. And then we'll say mood and we'll say aggressive. Okay. We'll say aggressive because that's how, my brain interpreted it at that time, was that it was a threat. Okay. So some other things about that pit bull, let's say it was brown. Let me see what else it had here. It gave us a whole list a second ago. Let's see what it says. So it says thoughts, bite. Okay. Let's just accept this. So basically it says, okay, when I see this image of a pit bull, my inner subconscious mind says that it's automatically aggressive. It's a pit bull. It's going to bite. It's going to bark. It's going to be angry. It's going to be protective over the owner. And it's going to be loyal to the owner. Therefore, it's going to see me as a threat. It's going to need attention. And its goal is to protect the owner. So that is my default definition. When I look up the word pit bull, these are all the things that my brain associates with that pit bull based off of my experience. So all these variables, the mood variable, the thoughts of the pit bull, the traits of the pit bull, and the behaviors of the pit bull, and the goals of the pit bull, let's say. So what we can do as conscious beings is go into the subconscious and question, why do I believe and what evidence do I have to actually fully support that this is absolutely universally true? So now I might go in, and this is why the conscious mind is so important. We can go in and edit this. So now I can say, okay, the pit bull, again, probably just wanted to play. So I'm now changing this thing where it says mood, playful. And actually I'm jumping ahead. So let's keep this as aggressive because I want to show you guys something. I got to show you guys a technique before I change the definition that easily. But that is basically how our brain perceives images. Okay. It goes into our brain's dictionary. It pulls out a value of multiple variables. So let's say you try to make, in this case, they use a money example. And I think let me go on order here. Let's make sure these are in order. Okay, so it says, let's say you try to make more money. Your conscious mind types this: if beliefs around money equals abundant, take an action. And again, we can go through what functions are. I realize how geeky this is and how deep this is as I'm doing it. So I could say, okay, if in the variable or the dictionary of a pit bull, if the mood meaning my brain, my reticular activating system is looking for this signal. Remember, I have a pre-bias based on my experience. So I'm looking for this signal. I have those blue tinted glasses on. Okay, so it says if the pit bull's mood equals aggressive, okay, aggressive, then we have to give it an action or some kind of response. Then I say, so if these conditions, then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z about it. So let's just say take, let's say, so in this case, it'd be the opposite of take confident action. So it'd be like take threat action. I don't know. Okay. So I would say consider it a threat. Now, and then I could say if it's not, basically it's saying if its mood does not demonstrate aggression, pardon me, y'all, then it would take a friendly action like petting the dog. But if it sees it and I assume based off the images and the way that my experience shaped me, if I was traumatized and I see that dog it appears aggressive to me, I'm going to take the threat action, which is either run or fight or flight. Or if it doesn't demonstrate the aggressive traits, and I think I spelled aggressive wrong, then I'm going to try to pet the dog or do some kind of friendly thing like offer it a treat. Okay, so this is literally how our brain is set up. Okay, to where it has actions that depend on conditions and variables in the mind's dictionary. We are getting deep, but I told you guys, this is how you reprogram your subconscious mind. Now, most people try to brute force beliefs. So it says to change behavior, you don't just say, I believe, basically, if in this case, you wouldn't just say to yourself, I think pit bulls are happy. You wouldn't just go from seeing them as a threat, traumatized, to now seeing them as happy based on you saying it one time. So this is where repetition comes into play and emotional intensity come into play, as well as supporting evidence. So in order to change your belief, you can't just say it one time and then your life changes. You have to do it multiple times through affirmations or through just consistent behavior, or you have to have an emotional event that transforms you. That's called being humbled or becoming aware or having grace, some people call it. And then, or you have to have evidence, whether you did your research about pit bulls and looked up the genetics. You have to have concrete things that say, okay, now I'm going to reintroduce this belief about pit bulls and change some variables. So one of the ways we do this is through, we'll call it a loop. So in this case, we'll call it repetitive action, which might be a better way to say it. So now I'm going to say, this is really geeky. Okay, so we're going to go over this belief 100 times. Okay, that pit bulls are aggressive. Now we could visualize this. We could visualize a pit bull, maybe hugging its owner. Pit bull hugging owner. That could be one of the visualizations. Now these are actions. Notice I'm not, why does it say, So notice I'm not just saying these are fluffy words. These are actions that somebody is actually taking to transform. It doesn't just happen overnight. And let's say we feel happy because we saw a pit bull in our visualization hugging their owner, loving on the owner. And then now we're going to create an action as if it's true. Okay. So now we're going to transform our fear from a threat into not a threat. Okay. So we have to do this. Basically, it's saying, okay, we're repeating something 100 times. We're visualizing 100 times, and we have to add an emotion to it, an intensity to it so that it builds resonance that sticks above the noise floor. And then we're going to create an action, because when you have an emotional charge from a belief and you reshape your perspective of an experience and you emotionally charge it, then you create a new belief. And from the belief creates new fruit, AKA the actions that you take get to different results because you've now gone to the core root of that belief. Now it says sometimes when the subconscious has no value, meaning, for example, if you don't have any experience or have never seen a pit bull, don't even know what a pit bull is, it will pull an error. So your brain can't define the thing. And by automatic default, our brain is set to protect our genetics and the proliferation of our genes. And so this is called the protective pessimism, AKA survival mode. So you will always assume the negative around something that you're not familiar with, okay, because that enhances survival of the genetic pool. Okay, so that is why we do that. So if you never saw a pit bull in your life, by default, if you don't have any experience, you're going to assume that it's a threat, especially when you're under pressure. All right, so we can get deep with this, but I'll kind of speed through these. these are the brainwave states. Some people use binaural beats to trigger these, but just understand that you have these naturally every time you wake up and go to sleep. That's why people pray in the morning time, right when they wake up. That's why they pray before they go to sleep. They're activating, they're moving into what's called the alpha state, because this is the bridge between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. This is when people pray. Okay. And this is also understanding theta and delta is also, why some religions pray multiple times a day. They're trying to get into these zones where we're more relaxed and we can reprogram that subconscious mind. Now, another thing that I forgot to say about the garden is the point of the sun. So the goal of the sun is to provide. So imagine this is the sun up here. Okay. It creates directionality, because in plants you have what's called photosynthesis. And like I said, with the apical meristem, it grows towards sunlight. So you are growing towards a goal in this case. And the difference between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind is that the subconscious mind just does stuff. It's almost like the engine of a car, whereas the conscious mind is the driver of the car. It's telling the car where to actually turn and where to go. So when you guys set a goal, an outward conscious goal, the subconscious mind looks through all your beliefs. It looks for supporting evidence, because it's now crafting an action that you can take to get towards that goal. Okay. Now, what happens is most producers and artists and everybody in the creative space, they have these aspirations that are way up in the sky that counteract their actual belief system. And here's where we have what's called cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance, some other people call it we'll just call it incongruity. It's when your subconscious engine does not match the intent of the conscious mind. So if my conscious mind metaphorically wants to go 100 miles an hour, okay, this is a conscious goal, let's say, but my subconscious maxes out at 60 miles per hour. Okay. And therefore, no matter what I do consciously, I could want it all I want. This is called desire. And when we get into the definition of desire, it's really mimetic at its core. But let's just say desire. Okay, you have a conscious desire, aka a goal in this case. I can't spell conscious today. I spelled that wrong. Okay, man, conscious desire, aka a goal. Okay, now this has to match or have congruity with the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. This has to have what's called intent behind it. Intent or alignment is when your conscious goals match and mirror your subconscious programming. Like a dictionary, I can't force myself to assume that pit bulls are happy without the evidence, without the modern experience, and without having an emotional transformation around that thing. So I could want a pit bull to be happy, but it does not actually occur in my conscious experience because these aren't aligned. Okay. And this is where people fall short, including myself. I'm not acting like I'm some guru over here. So let's talk about how even society is manipulated on these levels here. So firstly, we have what's called a trigger, and we use these in marketing too, but not in an evil way. Now, most of society triggers you guys with fear, like of war, fear of loss of love, fear of loss of money, fear of loss of status, fear of loss of power, whatever the loss is. You want to be pain averse. Okay, so you have fear that they use. They use a threat, which is called the common enemy, because they want to galvanize the energy of a specific people to create an opposite identity called the threat or the common enemy. And we humans are built to keep our genetics alive. And so we avoid loss because, again, the first thing we do when we don't have a dictionary definition of something, an outside source, an outside variable, is we assume that it's a threat because we want to be pessimistic about the input because we want to keep our genetics alive and not mistake that hole for a safety net when it really just is a sinkhole. Okay. And then it says they also use anger through the algorithms you guys have seen. They use bots, they use fake accounts to trigger people's emotions because they know if they can trigger your emotions, you'll be more invested emotionally into the platform. You want to get a retort in, you want to respond, you want to go back and forth with a bot most of the time. Reddit's full of bots, Twitter full of bots, Instagram full of bots. Most people are interacting with bots they think are human. And these platforms are tricking you guys. Not that this is a core point for today, but your whole algorithm is shaping the conditioning of your subconscious mind. So you start to pull this false evidence based on the algorithm to support your biased belief. And like I said, the subconscious mind doesn't know if it's true or false. There is no true and false in the subconscious mind. It's based off of repetition. What happens over and over and over again becomes the truth in the subconscious mind. And so when you see the algorithm reinforce this belief, or, girls versus guys, or whatever, black men ain't ish over here, and you see the whatever, people tearing each other down all the time, you're reinforcing through what's called impressions. Seeds are being planted into your subconscious mind, whether you know it or not. The more frequent you see these messages, the more your subconscious mind believes it. Quite literally just seeing it over and over and over again, your subconscious mind begins to define it as an absolute truth, even though it could be complete falsity. So like I said, once those roots grow from those algorithmic seeds, then your brain creates those neural pathways, and energy likes to move in the path of least resistance. Therefore, the first action you take from an outside input or a stimulus is based on how you built that neural pathway. So if they defined it as a threat, black men as a threat, subconsciously, this is not on a conscious level, you will take actions to thwart, counteract, or attack because you see the black man, I'm just saying, as a threat. And that's how they did us in movies, through books that were just completely false, all types of stuff, propaganda, on and on and on, because they have to demonize an enemy. You can't fight a war where you love the enemy. Like, you have to hate your enemy to pull a flamethrower out and burn him out of a cave. That's what they did over in, I think it was Vietnam or somewhere. You have to hate your enemy. So how do they create that hate? They create the idea that enemy is a threat. And how do they create the idea of a threat? They create the group dynamic. How do they create the group dynamic? They create inside groups and outside groups via what's called the common enemy. And because they define that outside source as an undefined outcome, they're like, we don't know what they'll do. That's what they say a lot. We don't know what they'll do. Okay, so they define that in your brain because you don't have a definition for an outside source that has no definition. You automatically create it as a threat. And the first biological response is to preserve your genes, and therefore you're willing to take action against that outside threat. And that's how they galvanize the people to do whatever they want in this world. And this is why we have to take control of our subconscious mind. This is why I believe that when, Jesus, for example, in the Bible said that the kingdom is within you and that ye are, creators, he's talking about we can reprogram the subconscious mind. Just because you were born a certain way, you came up a certain way, does not mean that you're bound to that specific thing. You can change that because you have a different experience and you have more perspective. This life is about perspective. I could put on blue shades. I could put on red shades, red tinted shades. Whatever shade I put on, that color will appear more obvious because of what's called resonance and amplification of signal. So anyway, what they'll do in this world is trigger an emotional state. They'll introduce a repetitive message, aka the frequency of communication. So again, they'll usually surround us with social proof, aka our algorithm will say the same thing on all platforms: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You'll hear from a ton of influencers, everybody saying the same thing. That's called social proof because they have authority. And when you have authority, it's almost like having permission to code somebody's computer, their source code. It's the same exact thing. That's why parents have authority over their child to feed them new beliefs very quickly in their theta state from 0 to 7, because they have authority over them. They provide their life force quite literally as a kid. You can't do anything. You can't feed yourself. You can't hunt. You can't, so your parents do most of that for you, and they are your life force. They are your gods on earth, I'll say, your providers on earth, I'll say. And because of that, they have what's called an authoritative stance. And any beliefs the parents have are passed to the child because of that fact alone. And also mimetic behaviors in our mirror neurons as well. But that is where the authority comes into play. And then nextly, we create that group identity. Like I said, they not like us type of approach. It's creating an in-group and out-group dynamic. And then lastly, they'll reward your conformity in the society and punish the dissent against their intent or their agenda in this case. So that's kind of the dark side of what I'm teaching you, is how people manipulate you, whether you know it or not, through your own subconscious mind. They don't need to pull out a weapon on you. They've already planted all the seeds they need in your brain so that you act exactly how they want you to act. And that's why I'm teaching you guys how to gain power over your subconscious mind, because once you understand that you have this power, you don't need everybody else around you telling you what to do, how to program you, how to, telling you what's next and all types of stuff. It's based on what you want to do. It's based off of your discernment, and you have more intent behind that. So I think I've covered the message quite thoroughly today. If you enjoy this message, all I ask of you guys to do is just go to busyworksbeats.com. Actually, let me show you guys what it looks like real quick. So if you guys go to busyworksbeats.com, go to where it says free downloads, make a free account. It's absolutely free. And then under your downloads tab, you'll see this page pop up. Go to books, and then you guys can find my books here. I'd recommend starting here. If you want mindset, go to the Producer Bible. This one's great for mindset. If you want business stuff, go to where it says Busy Signal. And if you want more like future, what to do in the future type talk, go to where it says Game Time. So this Producer Bible, is 100 pages of just mindset stuff. And again, I basically took the parables of the Bible and gave you a more modern approach to it so that it made sense to you as a music producer or creative. So it's absolutely free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com. So I'm writing a new book soon, and it's really going to be about mindset stuff. But this is a great place to start. Okay, guys. So I think I've covered everything. I probably missed a couple concepts, but I'll make a follow-up video if anything. I just want you guys to understand how powerful your subconscious mind is. So anytime you want to change, whether you're saying, okay, I want to stop eating cookies like myself. Okay, I want to stop eating cookies so I can build a beach bod. And the first thing I had to do was address why that behavior exists. Is it a coping mechanism? Is it a reinforced behavior simply because I just kept doing it over and over? That's probably the case. Okay. And then I have to ask, okay, what is my belief around it? What's my experience around cookies? I've never had a negative experience around cookies. Now, if I ever ate a cookie and threw up, then my brain would have a negative association to cookies, which means I would probably stay away from them for a long time. That's why when you eat food and you get sick around it, you stop eating the food. Okay. So my experience probably isn't going to change around a cookie. So instead of trying to change the experience, let's say, what am I emotionally charged about around this cookie? Why am I emotionally charged around getting this specific thing? And it's manipulating dopamine. I understand it's manipulating our desire for fats and salts and all types of stuff, but I have to become charged about my goal. Here's what I forgot to say, actually. When you create the goal, okay, the goal is the conscious mind. So this is the above ground mind. So the goal is the direction you're trying to go. Here's my last point. So let's say my goal is to change my behavior around eating 7,000 cookies. Okay. So let's say that's my goal. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. That's my goal. So it's pointing in a direction. Now that direction is usually the sun. Remember, the sun gives direction for the subconscious mind to move based on things like the apical meristem and all that, photosynthesis, all types of stuff. I didn't get too deep with plant science here. Okay. But let's say this is the sun and I'm moving towards that goal. A quantitative, believable goal, okay, is to, instead of saying I'm never going to eat cookies ever again, I could say, okay, I'll eat 1 cookie a day. Start small. You want to believe your goal because, again, if there's a dissonance, if there's a disbelief between what your subconscious believes versus what you consciously believe, you won't even take action. It will cancel out. It's like -1 meeting +1. And this is called a counter intention. Some people call it counter intentions. Some people call it counter actions. Some people call it counter beliefs. Whatever you want to call it, we'll just call it a counter intention in this case. Because -1 +1 equals 0. Therefore, you're not going to take action. So again, my conscious mind could say all day that it wants to not eat cookies. But if I don't believe that I could take the first step in moving in that direction, it's going to cancel out. This is why I have to go back to the subconscious mind and reprogram my belief around cookies. But even deeper than cookies, what am I seeking through a cookie? It's a result. It's a reward for some reason. And why am I rewarding myself? I have to go through the whole science of what, the why in order to change this. Or maybe I watch a video that has a trusted source with more evidence that cookies are now a negative experience. So there's different ways to reframe the belief. It's not always based off of a negative thing, though. I just want to make that clear. Sometimes you're just emotionally charged about a positive goal, which requires the diminishment or diminishing, whatever the proper word is, the getting rid of that specific sub-belief. So we're getting really in the weeds here, but I want to thank you guys. Go to busyworksbeats.com, sign up for free, go to where it says free downloads and go to the book section here. All right, guys, hopefully I didn't miss anything, but yeah, when you guys write goals, my last point here is that it has to be believable. If your goal is not believable, you won't even begin to take action. That is the last key that I almost forgot to tell you guys. All right, guys, subscribe if you're new. Peace.